the world's only source for All Out. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
That's me.
Hey, welcome on, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been a pretty quiet week in Iowa. We had some snow. I think you might have gotten some of that too.
Yes, we did. We were at around 60, and we suddenly had some snow. And I am now going to cut the boring weather talk and go on to discuss the fact that we are in fact on week 8 of the winter season. All sports anime covered between the 19th to the 25th of February. Last week we said we were going to get our Long Riders review out soon. We're still going to get it out soon, and totally for realsies this time. We are going to start recording it as soon as we're done with this.
Yeah, I'm still reeling from your comment that my snow talk was boring. Like, it snowed in February, Matt. That's really interesting stuff. The people need to know.
Well, I know. To be fair, in Indiana, it is pretty uncommon.
Well, I mean, not really, but anyway. We should stop here. This is a terrible start. We would start over and re-record, but let's be honest, we're not going to. Let's just jump into Yowamushi Pedal. What do you say?
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so this episode 7, was all about the start of a farewell fun ride to the Hakone team. So this is like the last ride of the third years. And the major thing is, we're having all this great, riding with everybody, it's all very sentimental because Shinkai and Fuku kind of, exchange these very meaningful words about whatever. And what we discover is that this entire fun run is also meant to be a race between the third years and their successors. So what we have is Izumida going up against Shinkai, who was... so we have the sprinters going up against each other, essentially. And there's a lot of back and forth about how much this means to Izumida, because Shinkai was always his idol. He was the guy who he always was training to beat, and he finally beats him in this race. Spoiler alert. And then it sets up for next episode, where we have Minami going up against Toto. And that's pretty much it. Did I really miss anything of great importance?
Somehow... Well, no. I'd say the most important thing from this episode by far was that Izumida revealed that he has named another one of his muscles.
Right. Yes, because we had Frank and Andy, and now we have his new back muscle, Fabian.
Yeah. So Frank and Andy are his pecs. And then he also has his abs, which he talks about but does not name. Right. And then he spoke at some length about how the back muscles are actually the most important in the body because they're your biggest muscle, and they link your legs to your shoulders, which, I mean, yes. Yeah. And it's a very, I guess, detailed imagery of how unbelievably enormous all of Izumida's muscles are under his jersey, which is a little hard to believe, like the way that they animate him when they're picturing his muscles looks so different from how he looks when he just has a shirt on, Like you'd think you'd be able to tell that this was the most muscular high schooler in Japan, but right. You really can't.
Yeah, I don't know. It's... I guess the entire point of this was to sort of build up Izumida as being, like, a real threat, because we do have this whole issue of... So, Izumida has been beaten before, past seasons. So, how do we make it so that Izumida should be considered a real threat now to Sohoku?
Yeah, you have to give him a new power.
I have to give him a new big power-up, and that would be, I guess, Fabian.
Right.
And we have to do it by establishing the fact, he managed to beat Shinkai.
Right.
The best sprinter from Hakone. This doesn't really work. I mean, I'm sorry to say, I think you kind of feel the same as me in this regard. But it doesn't really work for a couple of reasons. First of all, Shinkai did nothing but get thrashed last season. He kind of existed for the sole purpose of showing how strong other characters were.
Right.
Like, and we never actually saw him get his own big win.
Well, yeah, he was there to make Midosuji a true villain.
Yeah, exactly. He had one other big moment, I think, last time as well, because he got really broken, and then he came back. And I think, was it Imaizumi who ended up beating him again?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember.
Okay, I don't really. I know he had one more time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the point. That's what I'm getting at, though. It's like, yeah, it's cool that Izumida finally managed to beat his idol. It doesn't really mean much when this guy... We have not really seen this guy actually do that much. It's very insistent that he's this great sprinter, but, it doesn't really feel like it means a whole lot.
Yeah.
And not only that, in an earlier episode, just this very season, we had a conversation between Aoyagi and Teshima where Aoyagi says, like, hey, I actually managed to beat Tadakoro once. And Teshima's response was, great. Like, it's just one time, but, it shows that you're improving. Here, we're seeing Izumida's win being like it's supposed to be this grand, like, no, Izumida is now the new big threat on Hakone because he managed to beat Shinkai.
Yeah, just one time and by, less than a meter.
Exactly, like by milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's kind of a recurring issue with Yawapeda where the series always has to make every race extremely close.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't seem to know how to establish tension by, like, being able to maintain a lead or, like... It's always about the comeback in this series.
Mm-hmm.
And, the comeback is fine, it is the most common narrative tool in the sports series. But when all you're doing are comebacks, it's not terribly exciting.
Yeah, that's true. If we think... What races have we seen in this season so far? And let's try and think, have any of them not been a narrow comeback?
Right. We've only seen a couple of races. It was Ashikiba versus Onoda.
Mm-hmm.
We had Tadakoro versus Aoyagi and Naruko.
Right.
And we had Naruko versus Midosuji. And they've all been just by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, and they've all been comebacks.
Right, and not only that, but even last season, every single race was a comeback. Like, maybe not even so much a comeback, maybe.
But it was always tight, yeah.
It was always extremely tight. In fact, one episode, like, one major race actually had a 3-way tie.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so it's like, the series does not seem, like, it's an issue where they don't seem to understand, like, this is something I think that Ace of the Diamond has done very well, where you do get to see the main team in that. Occasionally, it's all about, they get an early lead, and then, it's about the tension of actually being able to keep up that lead. And, maybe they're not always able to quite do it, but, like, it still gets, they manage to narrow the gap a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it still is, they're mostly in control of the game. But you can still establish tension that way.
Right. And also, this seems to have a very tenuous connection to real-life cycling. Where,
right.
Yes, there are photo finishes in cycling, of course. But when you're doing these long-distance rides like they're doing, it's not going to be like that every time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, great, Izumida, you beat him by a hair this time. And I guess the series is supposed to make it seem like, yes, Izumida has finally surpassed his mentor. And it's like, did he really? Like, he barely won that.
Yeah.
And, they could race again and it could come out completely differently.
Yeah, can I just comment on some other things I thought were kind of funny about that sequence?
Oh, please, by all means.
I like the fact that... So they have this extended sprinting sequence where Shinkai and Izumida are going to determine who's the best sprinter on Hakone for the last time.
Right.
And both of them have very strange ways of expressing themselves when they're sprinting.
Oh,
So
I know exactly what you're going to bring up, and I made note of that myself. But go on, continue.
Okay. So Izumida, every time he sprints, he yells the word abs over and over.
Right.
Because he's using his abs to power his pedaling. So he's just yelling abu abu abu, which you'd think would be harder than just pedaling. And then Shinkai goes insane and lets his tongue hang out, and he yells the entire time. His tongue is just wagging out, and he's screaming like a crazy person.
Right.
Because he's sprinting so hard that he can't even control himself, and
it's even like less like a yell. It's almost like a snarling, like a mad dog.
Yeah, that's probably a good description. But either way, they're both expending energy in ways that real cyclists definitely wouldn't. But that's neither here nor there. It's not meant to be totally realistic. But what got me was the fact that one of them is screaming about his abs. The other one's tongue is hanging out while he growls like a dog. But at the same time that you're hearing that, they have this like internal narrative where both of them are separately thinking about how much they value the friendship and companionship of the other. like Shinkai you have a close up of his tongue hanging out, he's thinking, Izumida, you were always there, keeping up with me, working your hardest. I'm so proud of who you've become. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the backing vocals.
No problem.
And it's really hard to take it seriously.
Yeah, kind of. And then you also have Izumida over there going, Shinkai, I really...
Abu,
Abu, you mean so much to me, and you're racing. I have always looked up to you. I wear this number 4 just for the sake.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
It's so odd. Anyway, so you see that a couple of times in the episode where it just comes across as odd. Another thing that's odd, they don't even mention the main characters in this whole episode. Like, because by the time you get to the end of the episode, they're still not done with the race. This is the first multi-episode race, really.
Right.
Well, I guess it's the second one, but it's the first multi-episode race that hasn't included Sohoku, and I don't really know why we care that much.
Yeah, because Hakone is really meant to be the big rival team.
Yeah.
We don't really need to get that much into their personal struggles. And I think one of the big problems with the series as well is that it seems very resistant to the idea of having multiple different teams be important. Like, you can have one team that has, like, maybe they have, like, one opponent on that team that really stands out that's, like, a really good sprinter. Or you could have somebody, it's like, okay, we're not that great, but hey, we got a climber, and you have an issue, like, where they kind of come out of nowhere. It's like, I'm fine with Hakone being the main rival, but this kind of feels like... It feels like the author didn't really know... Like, of the author of the original manga, they didn't really know what direction they wanted to take the story in. So, rather than actually do much of anything, kind of decided to delay it by being like, okay, well, why don't I write about Hakone now? And kind of deal with their personal struggles. And, I don't know, it's just not terribly interesting. Like, my big issue is that... So the whole thing about Sohoku is that they're doing, the whole shonen sports trope of, we are a unified team. All we care about is, we ride as a group and we live and die as a group. Right. Hakone's whole thing was, I thought, supposed to be that they were just the dominant champions. They believe in natural talent.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, the talent of their team, the individual strength, they all kind of pull each other together. But then when we start getting more and more in depth with their team and seeing their personal struggles, they're really not any different from Sohoku.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I was trying to change, but do you want to finish your thought?
Yeah, well, basically, it's just... they like everything about this team feels like it's a very tightly knit team. You know, we learn all this stuff about, you know, how much Izumida cares about, you know, like living up to Shinkai's legacy, or Minami, who just doesn't, like, you know, he's so torn up over the fact that he lost for his team.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, lost at the inner high due to his own carelessness. And, you know, it was like, I don't really see how these guys could be any different. Like, you could interchange these two teams, and it wouldn't really make any difference, is what it feels like.
Yeah, you're right. They have the same characters, a bit more or less.
That being said, I did like the one thing I really did like about this episode was that I did like the conversation that Minami had with the I think with Kuroda, who's the new second in command of the team, where he was like, because he's legitimately torn, because I do like the fact that he is legitimately torn up about the loss at the inter high, and that he does largely blame himself, and that has apparently changed his writing style. And Kuroda actually told him, it's like, yeah, you're working a lot harder now, but you're also not very good anymore. You know, you're not really writing at your own pace anymore. You know, you are the kind of guy who needs to be a little bit more carefree and uncaring. And I did think that was at least an interesting conversation, you know, being about, you know, it's good for you to, you know, feel responsible, but at the same time, you shouldn't lose sight of who you actually are.
Yeah. It was fine, but ultimately I still don't understand why we're paying attention to these.
Yeah, and I don't understand, like, because do we have to do this whole thing about Minami versus Todo now, which seems to be what the next setup is?
Yes, we do. We have to do it for every character. Every character has to have a showdown because that's what this show is. And I don't mean to be this bitter about Yowamushi. I usually like Yowamushi. I just don't understand why they're taking it in this direction and dragging it out. Because the pacing was pretty good up until now.
Right, and now, to be fair, the pacing was not great during season 2.
Of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. I'm saying that I was hoping this season had taken a turn.
That's fair, and it's kind of a shame to see that it hasn't apparently learned much from last season.
No. I just want to close our commentary on Yowamushi with this line from early in the episode. They have this recurring thing where the first years or the non-main characters from Hakone will be riding behind the main characters and will comment on how awesome they are. And my favorite line was one first year who said, "Amazing! They're recognizing each other's abilities. I want to be just like them." Like, okay, you don't need a character to tell the audience that they're recognized. Like, that's a point where you can just be silent. Everyone can tell they're recognizing each other's abilities. And it was so ham-fisted with everyone gathering around and complimenting each other and patting each other on the back. But anyway,
real quick, along those lines, there was actually, I thought you were going to talk about a different line, which was, there it is, Shinkai's kapow pose. Because it needed to remind us, right, that's his thing.
Yeah, because it's not actually memorable enough on its own unless a character tells us that it's memorable.
Right.
Speaking of something memorable, let's go over March Comes In Like a Lion.
Okay.
Alright, so as episode 19, it kicks off with some internal stuff from Shimada. Basically, him describing his upbringing, how he grew up in a really small town in the north. There weren't many kids around him. He sort of had to find his own activities. He ended up being trained in shogi by the elders in his village. He found out that he was kind of a natural at it, and he ended up having this lifestyle later in high school where he would work on the farm, and then he would use that to travel back and forth on the bus to Tokyo in order to compete in shogi. And this was sort of his upbringing in shogi, was that he had to commute to shogi matches in Tokyo. I guess he's felt this pressure the entire time he's been a pro, because all the elders in his town rested their hopes on finally getting a shogi master out of him. And he's felt that pressure for a long time. He sort of made himself sick because he's going into the fourth match of the Lion King tournament, and if he loses this, he's out. And so there's an extended sequence where he and Ray are practicing at his house, but he still has these severe stomach pains the whole time. Ray is not sure whether he should be forcing Shimada to relax or helping him practice, but Shimada insists he needs Ray to practice because Ray's style is similar to Soya's. They end up traveling to Kyoto for the fourth match. Soya sort of protects Shimada because he realizes he's sick, and he takes the brunt of the attention and lets Shimada rest. Ray ends up rooming with Mr. Smith, who gets angry about his cat for some reason, and then they start off the Lion King fourth match at the end of the episode.
Right. So, one thing I wanted to bring up, you had mentioned that with the whole thing about Soya wanting to help out Shimada. Was it just me, or did that seem a tad bit ominous?
I did not think it was ominous. Why do you think so?
It had this kind of weird dark tint to the screen, and they kind of did this weird little reverb as he did it. I don't, like, I guess it was probably just Soya wanted to help him out just because, you know, he sees the guy is sick, and, you know, maybe it's just along the lines of he wants to have a good match tomorrow, and he needs that, you know, he needs Shimada rested up if that's going to be the case. I don't know, there was something that I thought that they were going to build on it, like, or maybe expand on it a little bit, but it never really happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they were going for there was just to notice the strangeness of Soya, because the way they did it was Shimada was just standing there, he was getting his photo taken, and then Ray looked up, and out of nowhere, Soya had sort of materialized behind Shimada. So I think that was just the strangeness because of how foreign Soya is. That was just an outgrowth of his foreignness and his mystery.
Okay, I think that's fair. Other than that, I thought this was kind of an interesting episode because of the comparisons you can kind of judge between Shimada and Ray's life.
Yeah.
Like, I had never really taken note of Shimada's apartment before, or like his little house he has. It seems very eerily similar to Ray's in that there's really not much of anything around.
Yeah, it's basically functional.
Yeah, essentially it's functional. Like, I think the scene that really made that stick out to me was like when Ray opened up the fridge and there's nothing inside.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so this is a guy who's very much like Ray, who is just, he doesn't really eat much, because that's something that was established about Ray early on, was that, you know, he's not a big eater.
And he so just doesn't know how to prepare food. He just like doesn't take care of himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was kind of interesting to see Ray now starting to have to take on that role with somebody else, because, you know, that was something that Ray had realized a couple episodes ago, where he was like, you know, nobody really seems to depend on me. And so this is a situation in which we see a comparison, a pretty blatant comparison between how Ray was before, kind of letting everybody else take care of him, and him kind of, you know, passing it forward. Or paying it forward.
Right.
And I thought that, but, you know, he's also kind of inexperienced about it, because, you know, we see this constant, like, lack of confidence in his decisions, because he's constantly like, I don't know if I should have let us, I almost said Soya, Shimada, like, I don't know if I should have let him practice with me, just because. But at the same time, it plays back into Ray's own desires, because, you know, we saw before about how he wanted Shimada to be able to learn something from him. You know, he wanted to offer something for Shimada, because he felt like he was just kind of getting in his way.
Right.
And so, yeah, I thought that whole aspect was interesting.
Yeah, I mostly enjoyed the background detail on Shimada of like why is, and it sort of answered some of our questions from last week as to why does Shimada feel like he needs to make it back to his hometown. It's not so much, I mean, my theory was basically that it was an economic issue where he wanted to bring money into his hometown before it disappeared. I don't really think that anymore, although it was a pretty theory. I think it has more to do with him wanting to honor the the people that trained him originally and the people that taught him how to play shogi.
Right.
The people that supported him when he was becoming a pro.
Right, because they had even mentioned, like, look, or Shimada even mentions, like, look, we've never even had a B-ranked member come from our town.
Yeah.
And I think that's less wrong, and I think it's almost like a pride thing, like, it's not so much that people in that town are bad, it's just, it's a small town. They don't have just the sheer wealth of talent to draw from like, the big cities, like Kyoto or Tokyo.
Yeah, of course.
And so, but it's like, he found this passion, and I liked what he was commenting of about why he ended up liking shogi over having to deal with just, like games or manga or anything like that, because there is this sort of, there's a term that I don't remember the name of, but it's essentially the feeling you get when you finish something you really like, essentially. It's that sort of depression that comes from the finishing of a good story.
Right.
And, like, Shimada doesn't want to feel that, essentially. He likes the idea that shogi is something that can constantly be expounded on. It's something that he can keep developing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not something that he's just going to finish in a few hours and then, kind of reflect on for a while.
Right.
And I think that kind of speaks to the strength of games as a whole, like, because it's interesting because, like, for example, chess I know is a sport that has effectively been mastered, because, like, there has been almost no strategy in chess that hasn't been done. In order to actually change how chess is played, you have to be a master of the game. You have to know every single strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of interesting that that's what his motivation is, essentially. Like, he sees this never-ending world of, like, it's almost like a new frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, not that that doesn't already exist for shogi. I'm sure that there has been plenty written about the sport of shogi. But I think it's kind of along the same lines where it's something that he never has to lose it.
Right. Like, at a certain point, you're going to beat a video game, and you can only beat a video game so many ways.
Right.
You can read a story or you can write a book, but you can only write it so many. There's some definite ends to that, whereas I guess the best games and the best sports are constantly reinvented, and so that's sort of what he gets out of it, which I liked. I thought it was interesting too to see some of the parallel between what he saw of Rei and Soya, which again we've identified before, but it's like, oh, why does Shimada want Rei around? So it's because he reminds him of Soya somehow, that they're both all around players. They don't have a particular strategy they stick to, and they both are, like, incapable of expressing their suspicions, whereas they both just say that, like, oh, something feels wrong, something's disturbing. So I thought that was interesting, more parallelism with the two of them, but...
Right. It kind of feels like the series is it's very subtly implying this sort of, this conflict between Rei, like, we've discussed this at length before, but, who's he going to end up following?
Right.
And I kind of feel like what the series is going to end up getting to is the fact that, he can maybe do both.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that's wrong with attempting to do both.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, we're still a little early on for that, but...
Yep, I agree. And we've got a few episodes left on March Comes In Like a Lion, and even, I guess, 4 left. We've got 3 left in March Comes In Like a Lion. Which, oh yeah, last thing I want to say about it, I only realized this week that March Comes In Like a Lion is going to end in March.
Yeah, you had mentioned that.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I don't know if that was planned. Is the conclusion of the show going to be, we're going to find out how March comes in? Oh my gosh,
come in like a lion?
Wait, Matt. They're playing in the Lion King tournament.
Oh, my lord.
The Lion King tournament will come to an end in March. That's incredible.
Somebody on the planning staff was very cheeky.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it has some greater thematic meaning, but that is funny.
Well, we'll see next
Speaking
week.
of an absence of greater thematic meaning, do you want to discuss All Out?
Please, let's do so. Okay, so we're covering episode 20. Basically what happens is Tenjiku congratulates Jinko over their win. We get a little bit more background with Renpei. We kind of still see him a little bit despondent over over what happened before, but he seems to want to try and reconnect a little bit with Suna because he loses like a charm and he has to go around hunting for it, and it was something that Suna gave him. But the interesting thing is that Jinko doesn't really know how to express, how they feel about the fact that they won. And they get back, and like even after the game, they're kind of like, oh yeah, thanks guys, we appreciate the praise. But they're kind of just sort of taken aback more.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get back to the hotel, they're still kind of quiet. They're still not being like rowdy or partying, and it kind of takes some goading by Shingo to finally be like, look guys, it's good to be gracious in winning, but look, you guys aren't around the other team now. How do you want to how do you feel? And they all kind of erupt in happiness by lead of Sekizan. Then later that night, we have Shingo going out drinking with Yoshida, and they actually meet up with the coach of the Tenjiku team, whose name is Futami.
Right.
And he explains kind of what you were suspecting about a week or two ago. Futami is very similar to Yoshida, who was sort of he kind of became this sort of very distant coach.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between him and Yoshida was that he became distant because the team was getting too good and they no longer needed him.
Right.
And Shingo kind of explains to him, like, look, he kind of gives him the opposite advice that he gave Yoshida, which was about how he needs to make sure that, he still needs to remain like a figure to these kids and not, get too caught up in their rhythm. And that's kind of where the episode ends.
Mm-hmm. That was an awkward pause. Who wants to speak first?
I got it. Okay, so what I liked about this was that, again, I generally really like Shingo. I think he is one of the strongest coach-type characters that we've gotten in a series.
Yes.
In a long time. And I think what I like about him is that this is a man who comes with experience, and he kind of understands that there's no one right way to go about teaching. I really like this discussion he has with Yoshida about, because Yoshida was like, yeah, the kids got back really excited, talking, like, I've never seen them like this before. And, Shingo was seeing how excited that he was getting about the kids, who were really surprised and shocked by what happened. And he's like, look, man, you can't be as surprised as they are, because otherwise they're not going to respect you. You're just going to be like one of the guys. And there's this kind of... I appreciate the balance that Shingo has been able to establish between both being their friend and also being, like, a teacher to them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I guess, because that kind of came through in this episode, wherein he's kind of telling the boys, like, it's okay for you guys to celebrate, because he understands that, these kids need some guidance, like, in most aspects of their lives. And I guess I kind of appreciate the fact that, how often do we get a coach telling kids, hey guys, you can party now. It's fine. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, insofar as we have main characters that are coaches, we often see them being stoic and strong at all times. And, Shingo definitely does fill that role. But he expressed in an interesting way in this episode that, like, he understands that's a personality he puts on. Usually when we see coaches, all we're led to assume is that that's just who they are. That's their personality. And Shingo's like, oh no, it's an act. Like, I recognize that sometimes I need to be harsher. Sometimes I need to be more distant, and sometimes I can be closer to them and talk more personally. But you have to have a balance, and you have to always keep them off guard so that they can't just predict and expect everything you'll do. So I thought it was interesting for a coach to actually talk about why he acts the way he does, which, that's something you almost never see.
Right, exactly. Like, for example, I love Haikyuu and I love Ukai, but, he's kind of one of those guys, like, he's not really all that different off the, like, outside of the team than he is, just normally.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's kind of always just sort of this crotchety old guy, like, this crotchety, like, late 20s guy who's just sort of unsatisfied with his life, and he's kind of found something that kind of gets him a little bit more riled up, gets him out of bed in the morning almost. Whereas it's refreshing to kind of see a series that's like, look, coaches are the teachers, like they are the ones who are actually they are an important part of the team, because so often we have so many series that sort of undermine the position of the coach.
Yeah, exactly. Like the coach is another high school student or something.
Right. Like, a good example of this is in Ice Shield 21, with their coach who literally says, like, I didn't coach these kids, they did this all for themselves, I'm just kind of here to, give them just a little bit of guidance when they need it. Like, but, this is their team.
Mm-hmm. Or Kuroko's basketball, which doesn't have a coach. It just has one of their classmates.
Right, exactly.
Or, like, in Ace of the Diamond, they'll face other teams where the coach is just a figurehead and actually one of their teammates is the real coach or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to see a series where the coach is is pretty much almost the most vital member of the team.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think that's generally what this episode did well. I did really like that speech. I did have one kind of really moment with one of the lines that he said, which was like, it's like, he's like specifically like, one of the rules of rugby is that you show consideration for the losing team. I kind of had to pause there for a little bit because I don't have any sources to back this up. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons why rugby was created was for the British to beat up on the Irish, so I don't know.
That's not true at all.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No, it was a boarding school game.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I don't know where. No, and that's definitely like a thing in rugby where they're very serious about hanging out with and being like joking around with and being compatriots off the field with your opponents. So like, it is an unwritten rule that after the match you're supposed to like hang out and be nice with your opponents. That you keep all your aggression on the field.
Really? I did not know that. Wow, I feel like a jerk now.
Yeah. Apologize to the Irish. And the British.
Well, you have my apology.
Okay. Not me. Great Britain.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, no, it was a boarding school game. It was actually, and it's named after, there's a boarding school in England called the Rugby School, it was just like a bunch of high school students invented the original rules for the sport and then called it rugby because that's where they went to school.
Okay. Well then.
Yeah. So, I think that's all the big highlights from All Out. I thought it was a fun episode. It was sort of like a good interlude, and hopefully we'll get into their second training camp match next week.
Right. One thing I did want to bring up just real quick was that there was a little chat between Miki and Ume.
Do you have to bring it up?
Oh, okay, I don't have to.
No, you can bring it up. I'm not being serious.
Okay. Basically, it was... I don't know. I didn't actually mind it too much. It did feel a little bit like oh, those girls and they're silly talking about the boys.
Yeah, it didn't really add much. Basically, all that happened was the team manager and Miki, who works at the hotel, were talking about whether they liked any of the boys on the team, and then the team manager gave her theory on which members of a rugby team you should pursue for marriage. Basically, the theory being that you should pursue the forwards because even though they were bigger, they were usually nicer and less self-centered because they had to work in a team for scrums, whereas the wings and the backfield had more individual glory, so they weren't to be trusted.
Right.
Which, okay, but I don't really know what it added.
I don't know. I guess what it added was that it felt a little refreshing, because even though it was very clearly like girl talk and being like, oh, which one of the boys do you like? It felt a little bit more frank than it generally does, because generally what these types of scenes tend to establish is that one of the girls likes the main character and they get all nervous and scared about it.
Yeah. Thankfully, that didn't happen.
Yeah, actually, like, not only did Miki fully admit who she kind of liked, it wasn't, like, embarrassing, and it wasn't Gion. It wasn't really anybody of the any of, like, the major players that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
It was, like, Hirota that Miki liked.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, yeah, no, I kind of liked Hirota, actually. Like, he was the cool one, like, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, like, this actually feels like, again, maybe it's a little bit too stereotypically, ooh, who do you like, huh? It felt a little bit more like a natural feeling, and it did embellish Ume a little bit to me as a character. Mm-hmm. Like, she does feel like she is somebody else who's involved with the team. She does kind of feel like her own character, and when she was first shown off, she did kind of come off as being like, oh, we have a girl here too.
Right. Speaking of shows that have girls there too, let's talk about Tiger Mask.
Do they have girls?
Well, there's a girl alluded to in 2 points of this show in this episode. So we've got Tiger Mask episode 20. It opens up with the admission that Rory's dad owns the hospital and he doesn't want her to be a nurse because that's peasant work or whatever. And he just wants her to marry a doctor, not a pro wrestler, Naoto. And then Naoto goes, oh boy. Thankfully we steer clear of him for the rest of the episode, where we get back to the Hell in the Hole. If you remember, we had the face-off between Billy the Kidman and Odin against Kevin and Takuma. Red Death Mask approaches all four of them. Everyone suspects that he's up to no good. He says that if anyone wants to team up with him, he will let them. And so Odin betrays Billy the Kidman, runs down to join Red Death Mask, and then Red Death Mask breaks a table over his head. And the other three charge, beat up Red Death Mask, and knock him out immediately. And then Takuma and Kevin knock out Billy the Kidman immediately. So just like that, they're the only two left. They get to the top of the mountain, and the Guardian is a 7.5 foot tall robot who looks like a guy but is a wrestling robot. And they try to attack him, but he's invincible. But Odin comes out of nowhere. Eventually they're able to team up, all three of them, and throw the wrestler through a window, and he starts randomly attacking civilians. And then Tiger the Great the Third finishes off the giant robot. So ultimately Odin is able to return to his home in Europe.
Sure.
And Takuma and Kevin go apparently straight from the Hell in the Hole to Madison Square Garden.
Can I also bring up real quick that he's let out, that Odin is let out in the middle of nowhere, and immediately Catherine approaches him.
Yeah. So
like, where did she come from?
Yeah, exactly. So he just dropped off a bus in front of the middle of a wheat field. And Catherine's there.
Yeah, I just imagine him to be like telling the bus driver's like, no, just drop me off in the middle of a wheat field. She'll find me.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's Catherine's spot.
Yeah, no, she hangs out in wheat fields. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, like, because there was nothing else on that road, they must have had to have passed her.
Right? Yeah, well, and that's the funny thing, too, because so he gets dropped off, and he turns to his left. The bus drives off to his right. So to his left is Catherine, who approaches him. So meaning, yeah, they definitely drove past her, because she's approaching from the direction that the bus came.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the bus stopped, because he saw. I mean, there's no logic. There's no actual logic, and it's not worth this much discussion or thought.
No.
But so Odin goes back to vague Europe, sees Catherine, although the audience, we don't get to see Catherine. We just know she exists.
Also, you did miss one important detail during the match with Red Death Mask. So after he beats Odin in the face with a table, he then proclaims, "Okay, who else would like to join me?"
Oh, yeah.
And everybody is immediately, "No, we don't want to join you. Do you think we're going to fall for this twice?"
Yeah, exactly. It was funny because I'm like, surely Red Death Mask must have something else up his sleeve. Like, why would he recruit someone to turn on the other group and then beat him over the head with a table to make sure no one else would... So, like, all he was doing was ensuring that it would be 3 against 1.
Right, and that much makes sense.
And so I'm like, oh, why does he want 3 against 1? Well, he doesn't, because he just got knocked unconscious immediately. So, like, he's supposed to be this scheming Omega fighter, but he just sort of, like, got punched in the face.
Yeah, kind of. Like, he just immediately got, like, thrashed.
Yeah.
And I guess on one hand it makes sense because, yeah, if anybody actually tried doing that, that's pretty much what would happen. You might get one guy come up and then... But I can't believe he tried to trick them again, like, right in front of their faces.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one other thing about Blackout was that, don't forget, the reason why they were using Blackout was because they're apparently selling the information that they gather from these fights against the wrestlers. They're apparently selling the information to the Defense Ministry?
Yeah, because... Well, I mean, they said Department of Defense, and I think they did it because it was supposed to be an American.
Yeah, that's right. I was kind of half paying attention. I saw Defense and some department.
So, yeah, the idea being that this is some American arms manufacturer who's testing his super soldier robot against professional wrestlers. Because, like, that's what soldiers do. Is, like, practice wrestling moves. I don't know.
I mean, I guess you could almost argue, because if they're going to be selling super soldiers, you know, you want them to go up against giant beefy dudes, so...
No. If you're selling super soldiers, you want to make sure they can use a rifle.
Right, okay,
like,
fair
why
enough.
would they ever be in hand-to-hand combat?
Okay, fair point.
No, it was dumb. It was kind of, it was enjoyable. Like, that's the thing. I can't complain about these Hell in the Hole episodes because they've been a lot better than most Tiger Mask episodes.
Right.
But they weren't good.
Right. No, I am looking forward to next episode too, because the preview did imply that we are going to keep getting more Takuma, and we are going to see some more Tiger the Great the Third.
Yeah, exactly. And Tiger the Great the Third had a pretty sweet finisher move on Blackout, the killer robot. But...
Yeah, exactly. By the way, going back to the whole scheme about Red Death Mask, I think the point of that was, like, the entire point of that part was that so Odin could come back and have a redeeming moment.
Yeah.
Like, because that was the whole thing, was that it was Odin's appearance while Takuma and Kevin were fighting Blackout. Like, because they were getting thrashed, and then Odin comes out of nowhere and steals the key. And then, and also kind of takes one for the team fighting Blackout on his own. And so I think the point, and I mean, that's kind of the shame, is that they didn't really utilize Red Death Mask, because I think the entire point was so that Odin could have his come from behind save.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine, but at the end of the day, Red Death Mask is just a way cooler character than most of GWM. So to have him lose in such a stupid way was a letdown.
Yeah, no argument there.
Speaking,
also, Billy the Kid Man.
Yeah, Billy the Kid Man just disappeared. Who cares about him?
Right.
Clearly Odin doesn't. But if you want to speak about things that people don't care about, let's discuss Minami Kamakura Girls High School Cycling Club.
Okay,
the animation.
Sure thing. Yeah, the animation. Don't forget that part.
Yeah.
So, this is episode 8. So... Episode begins with Fuyune's leg cramping up in the last stretch, which, you know what, I'm going to give him. It was weird, but it was actually set up from before. And so it's now they're all kind of racing. Higa and Hiromi managed to pass both. They managed to pass Kuma in the very end. We have a section where Hiromi suddenly forgets how to turn, and it comes down to a three-way race between Hiromi, Azusa, and Kuma. And though it's really just kind of neck and neck between Hiromi and it's Nanami, I think, and she wins a unicorn, possibly. Hiroko, yes, thank you, Matt. So yeah, we have her like standing at the victory at the stands, and she's winning a unicorn. She starts flying the unicorn across the sea, and it's at this point we're realizing, okay, it's a dream. But she has this big discussion with her dream unicorn about how with this biking she can do anything in the world. Mm-hmm. She can go to so many unforeseen places. And then we discover, but then she wakes up because we find out that she was actually relaxing in the swim club. So I guess the swim club is just a normal part of this group's life now. Apparently it's raining, so they can't do their club activities. And we also find out that the cosplay club has been shut down was banned for 3 months, but because of Kuma's efforts, it's going to be reinstated. Yeah. That's about. That's
more than enough. What did we learn from AOP?
What we learned, I actually don't remember what we learned.
We learned how you should hold your arms when you're riding a bike so your arms don't get tired.
Okay, good. I'm glad they told us that. That's really special.
Yep.
Okay. So, Matt, I had a very terrifying realization at the very end of this episode.
I had the same one.
Oh, okay.
Let's say it on. So I'll lead it in. Mr. Bear or Kuma is 1, 2, 3. Sandy McDougal. Yeah, it's Sandy McDougal.
Yeah.
So for some reason they had to build up this bear character as the great rival biker. Just so that they could introduce Sandy McDougal into the cast of characters. Like, why? Why this way?
Why couldn't she just be a member of a different club and just be writing that hard?
Yeah.
Like, why did she have to be dressed in a bear costume?
Yeah, because that's going to have to be a whole other thing that we now go through of realizing, what, you were Mr. Bear the whole time?
And it's just really disheartening because Sandy McDougal was the one part of this. She was the one remaining hope I had for this show.
Oh, yeah, no. And it made me laugh because you spent most of last week's episode talking about how much you hate Mr. Bear. And now it turns out Mr. Bear is the only character you were looking forward to seeing.
I know! That was what was so terrifying about it. I almost messaged you immediately after I watched it. I was like, no, I don't want to spoil the reveal for him.
Yeah.
It technically hasn't been revealed, but when you watch the preview...
It's obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious because you see a girl and she's wearing the Kuma mask, and it's just immediately like, that's her.
Yep.
Otherwise, there was this one moment during the dream sequence. First of all, I was extremely confused by what was going on.
Because they never actually showed her win the race. They just cut straight from her winning the race to standing on a podium, but the whole standing on the podium sequence was a dream.
Right. So what's so weird about that is because she reaches out, because they even mention in the dream that the prize is a bike frame.
Yeah.
Right? And so you think, okay, so she loves this bike frame so much that she's imagining it as a Pegasus. Okay, fine, whatever. It's stupid, but I guess I get it. And then she starts writing it, and they're over the city.
Yeah. And they comment on how pretty Kamakura is.
Right, of course. Well, it is the most beautiful city. Please visit scenic Kamakura and its beautiful cherry blossoms.
It's not an ad. Definitely not an ad.
It is absolutely not a PR video. Anyway, but then she starts writing on the Pegasus and starts talking to it. And she's like, okay, and what's funny is that she mentions right there, it's like, okay, well, this is a dream. Immediately when she wakes up, she says, oh, it was a dream?
Right.
You said it was a dream in the dream!
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to bring up about her winning that race. I mean, there's many things worth bringing up, but here's one. So the prize for winning, they did confirm at the end of the episode, she did win a new bike frame.
Yeah.
One, that's not that great a prize because it's like it's just a frame.
It was just the bike frame.
It's just the bike frame with no components, no wheels, no it's just the frame. And two, what if anyone else had won? Like, what if the swim team had won and they'd been like, thanks for half a bike, like, what am I gonna do with this? I'm on the swim club. I was just doing this to resolve an internal dispute at school.
Right, like, that was my prize. I don't care about this bike frame.
Yeah.
And not only that, I want to point out as well about, I thought you were gonna go in a different direction with that, because it was the exact bike frame that she wanted.
Oh yeah, because of course it was.
Yeah, because of course she has I guess I can't complain too much, because this is the first time we've ever actually seen her work for something and actually get what she wanted.
I guess.
So,
but, like, it wouldn't make sense for any other person to have won. Because if any other person would have won, they would have been like, this is trash.
Right, like, well, I don't need this. Like, great. I guess I can go sell it for a few bucks,
yeah.
but...
And, of course, Korone just went ahead and used that bike frame to build her a new bike again.
Yeah, essentially. It's like, this is, like, Hiromi barely earns anything. And there's also this whole sequence during the Pegasus flying sequence where they keep telling us how she didn't win alone. And it's like, you people just met.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a week ago. I also want to point out that... Like, because they're talking about how, because it's raining out, they can't get together and do group activities. One, isn't your clubhouse, like, an actual house?
Yeah, right?
And second of all, what do you do?
Yeah, they don't have any activities. They've never shown anything.
We don't know what you guys do.
Yeah. No, it was painful. It was painful as per usual.
Right.
Did you have any closing thoughts on any further betrayals? Yes. Oh, okay. You've got more.
Oh, no, I got one. Don't you worry. I got two, actually. So, first of all, in her dream, she lets go of the unicorn because she was imagining tasty food.
A classic, yeah.
And she falls off because in her own dream logic dictates that. Once again, we have a return of Long Riders, where apparently the major appeal to this activity is, of course, to get food.
Right.
Second of all, like the Pegasus mentions to her, you can cross buildings, you can cross the mountains, you can even cross the ocean. You can't do any of that with a bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like. I mean, I get she's getting overeager and excited, and we're kind of seeing her own mentality about this, but it's like this isn't how bikes work.
Yeah, it's just it feels that way. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's dumb and it's stupid, and I hate it.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to next week then. Let's wrap up with Teekyu season 7.
Okay.
So. Somewhat of a return to form with season 7. It focused a little more on sticking to the core 4 characters.
Yeah.
Couple highlights for me was the episode 73, the first episode, where Konoe tries to start the well digging club, and she digs a well in the tennis court. And everyone realizes how amazingly fun digging wells is, and that's the...
Well, I mean, they're eventually going to go to nationals.
Exactly, so. Yeah, they have to train to go to nationals for well digging. There were no interconnected episodes this season. it was pretty dumb, but there was an episode I really liked where Morimo expressed her desire to weigh 777 kilos so that she could win the prize, and then everyone just Konoe suggests her own diet system, which causes everyone to become extremely obese, and they weigh 777 kilos, and then they start spitting out prize money.
I did appreciate some of her dieting advice there, which was exercise is probably not bad for you.
Yeah. But that was followed immediately by episode 77, which might have been the best one so far, in which they talk about hibernation with a bear, who discusses how he prepares salmon, how he keeps himself from pooping while he hibernates, and why he believes that bears are hunted, which he thinks that they're being punished for streaking. And he comments on how his uncle was shot with a shotgun because he was walking around naked. But it's not that big a deal because he didn't like his uncle anyway.
One thing I want to point out about this, I don't know if this is a pun that translates into English. Like, I don't know if they have this or not. Because don't forget, there is the term bare naked.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's...
That can't be it. Like, that can't be a pun that works in Japanese, can it?
No, it can't.
But that just occurred to me now.
Yeah.
But also, don't forget that the bear also really hates Pooh Bear because he creates an unideal standard of bears and make them think that everybody think that bears like honey. Yeah. Also, Pooh Bear is kind of a jerk too and beats up people on his when he's off the set.
Yeah. That Winnie the Pooh.
That Winnie the Pooh. I think what really highlighted that episode, that just the bow to tie it all together, was that we discovered that this was a story that Konoe was apparently telling Morimo, and it just a very brief shot where she says, and that really happened.
I can just trade it over to you. Were there any other episodes that stuck out?
I think the major one for me was episode 81, where we have Yuri basically a double date with
Kondo's sister.
Yeah, Anakov.
Yeah,
and where she's going to a mixer really, and she's meeting 3 monks there. Well, 2 monks, and then there's a freelance monk there.
Yeah.
And they end up having to fight off, Yuri's about to bail, and then she's on the toilet, a ghost possesses her, and the monks have to exorcise the ghost from Yuri.
Yeah, it was the ghost of a girl who died because there was no toilet paper in the stall.
Right, important things.
Yeah.
I think the other one that stood out to me was episode 78. I think it had a really great line in it. It had 2 really great lines. First of all, because I don't generally care for Kondo that much, but she did have a good one where when they're going to her place because they all want to bowl, and she mentions how nobody makes udon at a bowling alley.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite we have ever seen from her family. And then there's this whole recurring gag with telepathy in that episode where Yuri can apparently hear all the thoughts of people. And at the very end, when she's bowling, she starts hearing the thoughts of everybody, and then she hears a voice from a religious figure who tells her, if you believe there is a way.
Yeah.
And I like the thought of her suddenly getting starting to hear voices and start potentially creating a cult, but that never really happens.
Of course, yeah. No, I thought it was solid. The season ends with them buying a tennis robot who ends up winning nationals on their behalf. Par for the course.
It did kind of feel like that this was sort of intended to be the last season with that. It felt like a good, strong way to end the series.
Well, they keep
win nationals by nothing of their own accord.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the show keeps getting to places where, because they never necessarily knew if they were going to get renewed again, so they just end in ways that it could end, and that would be fine. Anyway, yeah, it was solid. I don't think it was the best. I think probably somewhere between 2 and 4 were my favorite seasons so far. But we got one more season of Teekyu, and then the 2 spin-off. Somehow this show has produced 2 separate spin-off series that we'll also do.
it's got to be super cheap for them to make, and if they get even like a very small niche fan base, it probably makes back the money pretty easily just by the Blu-ray or manga sales.
Yeah, exactly, which they advertised in the show.
Yes, they had a very good one this episode where they didn't even really... I don't even think there was really a setup for it. Just Nasuno held up the Blu-rays.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, buy the Blu-rays now. Okay.
Yeah. So, speaking of Blu-rays, you can look forward to next week when we'll be selling every episode of KoshienCast yet on Blu-ray.
We did not discuss this.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that it's a market that needs to be tapped. People want to watch this podcast in high definition.
They really want to watch my YouTube clips of just splicing together ad promotions and then throwing in stupid gags and text over it.
Yeah, they're very popular, Matt.
Well, I suppose we can look into it. But until then, Matt, would you please hit the credits?
It's my pleasure as always.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.